Welcome to the Advertising Forum. This is episode 1 of our new Future is Live series, sponsored by FreeWheel.
With us today is Mark McKee, EVP and General Manager at FreeWheel. For those not familiar, FreeWheel is an ad technology provider for premium video that focuses on connecting buyers and sellers, including things like live TV and events. Mark, welcome to the Advertising Forum.
I'm very excited to be here.
Mark, live is hot. We called it the future is live, but the now is live, in my opinion. And it's been growing rapidly, and we're seeing a lot of spend shifting in that direction, and we're seeing programmatic taking a bigger piece. From your perspective, what is the work that FreeWheel is doing in live so far?
FreeWheel has been investing in live for years. It's an area of focus, certainly as we saw publishers increasingly shifting audiences to streaming. And so it's been a very important part of what we do and where we invest in order to support them as best we can as the evolution of streaming certainly takes shape. Live is not an easy thing to get right. It also happens to be the most prized possession of any programmer as they think about their investments, how they're reaching audiences, and how advertising can be a critical part to that. Our area of more recent investments, one I'd say is just on bringing more standards to the ecosystem. Our work with the IAB and creating a live playbook along with Index, along with Amazon, along with NBCU, really is helping to bring more standardization. And the Tech Lab really did a great job at helping us steward that. New APIs, new ways of automating, and that has been a very big focus for us because it really is an industry opportunity that we all can work together to solve. The second one I'd say is probably in bringing really custom solutions for publishers. Every publisher is different. They have different strategies. They have different programs in which or franchises that they're investing in. A more recent one, as you saw the surge and the continued surge of live viewership of women's sports. I think Script's done a nice job, and we're working really closely with them to really take advantage of how programmatic and live can play into what they're doing with the WNBA and with the NWSL. And so that's been another big area of focus. Again, I'm using Script as one example, but we've seen that across the board. Not too long ago, but fairly recently, is the Summer Olympics in Paris. That was another area where we brought, working with NBCU, the first Olympics with programmatic opportunities in working in collaboration, not only with FreeWheel, but all of the partners that have to enable that, inclusive of the Trade Desk and our very own beeswax. And then last, from inside FreeWheel's walls, it is about how do we maintain the reliability. As we mentioned, there is a tremendous amount of pressure in these live events for the programmers themselves. And so how do we make sure that we have the infrastructure and stability and reliability to make sure that these live events go off without a hitch? And so in our infrastructure, just making sure that we maintain that 99.9% uptime in doing that, not just for the live event itself, but also as we think about programmatic, how that can play into this.
Yeah, Mark, I want to touch up on something. So first of all, I love to hear how many partners you have in the market. You mentioned Index, you mentioned IAB Tech Lab, you mentioned Amazon. The fact that you're working with so many companies across the ecosystem, I think, is very valuable. But how is programmatic and live working together now, and is it working well? And what are you doing as a company in FreeWheel to help your publishers in monetizing their inventory that's live?
It is working well. But there are a lot of people that and companies that you have to work with in order to ensure that it is seamless. I think the thing that you have to keep in mind is, in many cases, these live events are planned, but what happens during that live event is not. And you never know if a game's going to go to an overtime, or if there's an award show and there's some special moment that attracts so many people unpredictably into that environment, that viewing experience. And so I'd say the first thing is making sure that you have those trusted partners that you work with. And we work with, programmatically in general, we work with more than 80 different DSPs and SSPs in order to make sure that any publisher has the most demand available for them. The thing that I think is really important to think about is that programmatic and live really begins to democratize what TV can be for any one brand. And in many cases, yes, the big brands have a very big role in these events, but sometimes there is a surge in viewership, and programmatic allows, certainly in the streaming environment, the ability to start to monetize those unexpected surges and audiences, but at the same time do it in a way that preserves what the viewer really wants to see. And so it can't be thought of as just serve the ad. It also has to be, how is that ad created? How is that ad environment and ad experience preserved? And so that's been a big area of focus for us. And then if you look at the ecosystem more broadly, whether it being protecting about invalid traffic, certainly false positives can be triggered when you have a surge again of these audiences and impressions. And so really working at the FreeWheel side, how do you ensure that you can scale is foundational. How do you ensure that you have the right creative approval processes and ways to be adaptive for that? And those are some of the things that you have to do, not just what FreeWheel has to build, but also how do you work with DSPs? How do you work with SSPs? How do you work with IVT vendors? How do you work with measurement companies? And so that's why I say this is really an ecosystem effort, not necessarily just one or two companies making it work.
I love how you just mentioned how it's an ecosystem-based effort, Mark. That is so key to making our industry a better place. When you look at the bigger picture, how does a programmatic approach benefit publishers, especially when it comes to bringing in more diverse demand, which obviously takes place on a daily basis? Love to hear your 2 cents.
It's a very good question. I think, as I mentioned earlier, prize possession, any live event, whether that be an award show or a sporting event, and they come in all different sizes. We power around 600 live events a year for our publishers globally. Yeah, so it's a lot, and they range in size. One thing that is consistent is it's very important to the publisher. They are looking to find new ways in which to monetize and diversify the monetization that they have. And then the third thing is that they are also looking to make sure that it is the right creative for the right audiences. And so I look at this from a publisher perspective, and it does bring the best of both worlds. The engaged audiences in great content that is brand safe, and then the ability to bring what digital has always been able to do, which is more targetability, more flexibility as it relates to the messaging that one has, the better capabilities as it relates to pacing and forecasting. And so when I look at this, and I mentioned it earlier, this democratization of TV, we've seen it work. For one NFL game, there was that exact surge. We didn't know that it was going to go into overtime. And there was an increase of audiences and viewership of around 35%. You can imagine if you're on the ad side, you're saying, what am I going to do? And so what was really great about them enabling this programmatically was they saw a 27% increase in revenue because they were able to monetize this in a way that they historically maybe would not have been. Very dynamically, with greater flexibility and with the right partners in place. Again, that game was an overtime game. So, you can see that unpredictability. Even when you think you know exactly what's going to happen, you never do. And quite frankly, when we look at that ability to forecast audiences, when we work with publishers, we always get it wrong. I'd say 65% of the time, we don't necessarily get it right. And I say that not because the companies we're working with or ourselves don't have the right ability to forecast it. It's that in a live event, if it only happens once, you need to be ready for whatever happens. And that's kind of the fun. That's why people tune in. And so we also have to be ready on the back end.
As a consumer, as a tech platform, as an advertiser, that's the beauty of anything, everything live. There's a lot of what ifs, but it sounds amazing that you guys were able to get that level of granularity and just being able to fill and act so fast. That says a lot about what FreeWheel is doing.
It's not easy, and I think it's not easy for any of us. So that's what sometimes we might not plan for everything that would happen, but we have to have the ability to augment or adapt when it does.
Okay, so based on augmenting, adapting, because live is so important, and when consumers are able to tune into live events, whether it's an award show, a sporting event, whatever it might be, what should publishers and brands be thinking about? How should they be preparing?
There's a host of different things that I think everyone should be working on, both on the buy and sell side. From a publisher perspective, it really has to be anchored on the right partnerships and the right planning as it relates to your strategies. But that is probably the first and foremost. You have to have trusted partners and start slow. Working one or two to make sure everything is working as it is expected, even down to the stream stitcher, and making sure that everybody in that chain is fully aware of what is going to happen and fully prepared if something changes. So that's the first thing. As I think about the future, I'm really excited about how AI can certainly play a bigger role in that. And that's, people will say, the machine itself and augmenting how things scale or don't scale, depending on what you are doing or what the event is, what is taking place with the event. That's kind of a given. And we've been investing in that for many, many years. The part that's really interesting to me around AI is we talked about diversification of demand. And I think AI, again, in coupling that with the partnerships is, companies like Waymark that are using AI to create creative that is TV quality for brands that have never had TV. They've been primarily social. I think I look at companies like Universal Ads that FreeWheel powers, and I look at that as an effort to say, wow, we can start to bring AI and seamless, abilities to access TV in a way that hasn't been done in the past for brands of all sizes. Like that's the biggest thing. And then the last piece that I kind of would point to is more about what else. And so the thing that I'm focused on right now is linear TV needs to act like streaming. It already has the brand components to it. It's safe, it's big screen, and it's engaging, right? It's the same content. But how do you start to make that pool of inventory act like digital, act like programmatic? And that's been an area where we're really focused on making linear addressable inventory act like programmatic with the right signals, the right measurement, and all of the components that people don't have to make a choice. Buyers don't have to make a choice. Publishers don't have to make a choice on, is this a special thing? Or is this just how I operate when I look at my live content, my audiences in total, and that don't delineate between the world of linear or streaming, and just make sure that it's all working in a way that satisfies the DSPs, satisfies the brands, and captures the audiences that are tuning into that program.
Very well said. Make it easy for everybody. That's simplicity. And Mark, this has been an excellent kickoff to the new series of The Future is Live, sponsored by FreeWheel. We're so excited that we kicked it off with you. We haven't done this before, so this was such an amazing idea to kick it off this way versus having you be the finale. Thank you. This is going to be a fun one.
It'd be a depressing finale, I gotta say. They would. I'm a better warm-upper than a finale.
This is great. Your team's great. We're excited for the series. Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, ATG.
Thank you, Mark.